Hello, my sweet summer children. In today's video, I'm going to go through the size of each of these houses, military strength, going into season 3 of House of the Dragon. We're going to go through each faction's Air Force, Navy, Army, Holdfasts, and we can't forget the Special Forces. Where should we start? Well, let's start with the Greens and let's start with the nuclear weapons. The Greens have the biggest, oldest dragon, Vhagar. And Vhagar is a B-52 Stratofortress. She's battle tested and was one of the dragons that helped Aegon conquer Westeros. Vhagar is the most lethal weapon in the Greens' arsenal. Vhagar is ridden by Prince Aemon Targaryen. She's not fast, but if she grabs you, it's over. The Greens also have Dreamfire. Dreamfire is older than Vermithor. She was hatched during the reign of the Conqueror. She was the dragon of Rhaena Targaryen until her death. Dreamfire is a beautiful pale blue dragon, and it's a crime that we have not seen her yet. An absolute crime. Now, Helena has made it clear that her and Dreamfire aren't going to burn people, and they likely won't go to any battle. But Dreamfire is in King's Landing, I guess, protecting the city. I mean, just Dreamfire being there should be enough to deter armies from attacking King's Landing head on. The Greens also have Sunfire. Sunfire was terribly wounded in the Battle of Rook's Rest, but he is alive. Doubt he'll be doing much, though. Next up in the Greens Air Force, we have the dragon Tessarion. We've seen Tessarion flying with the army from Old Town. Tessarion, the Blue Queen, is a she-dragon that breathes blue fire. Tessarion is ridden by Prince Daeron Targaryen, known as Daeron the Daring. Before we get into the armies and who's who and who's on whose side, let's point out the obvious. The Greens have King's Landing. The Red Keep is not easy to storm with an army. There are huge, thick walls lined with scorpions and ballistas and watchtowers. It has garrison forces. And the Red Keep itself has Maegor's Holdfast. It's a castle within a castle. It's surrounded by a dry moat full of sharp iron spikes. And the only way in or out is through a drawbridge. Just because you saw Stannis almost take King's Landing in season 2 of Game of Thrones, you may think King's Landing is easy to take, but it's not. Stannis had a carefully laid plan, a huge army on land, and a huge force on sea that attacked at the same time. And as good as that plan was, he still failed to take King's Landing. So their home base is pretty well defended, unless they are attacked by the Black's Air Force, which is unlikely because attacking King's Landing with dragons means burning half of it down. But King's Landing also has the City Watch, the Gold Cloaks. There are about 2,000 of them. But with Corlys Velaryon's blockade on the Blackwater, he's pretty much making sure King's Landing gets no loadout. Now let's talk about the other armies. The Greens have House Lannister. So they have the Westerlands, and Jason Lannister's leading that army, and he has 8,000 men, 1,000 knights and 7,000 archers and cage lions. This is actually a pitiful force for the Lannisters to muster, considering that years later, Tywin Lannister marches with like 60,000 men at arms. But a good thing about being with the Lannisters is, one, the Lannisters are rich, but also the Lannisters have another stronghold for the Greens to hide should they need to. Casterly Rock. Casterly Rock is 2,100 feet high at its highest point, more than 3 times higher than the wall. It's 6 miles long east to west, and according to George R.R. Martin, it's the strongest and most impregnable seat in all of Westeros. During Aegon's conquest, Queen Visenya said she was glad that the Lannisters surrendered instead of seeking refuge inside Casterly Rock, because the rock may have withstood even Dragonflame. The Crown lands initially claimed for the Blacks, but Criston Cole went castle to castle, putting folks to the sword. Crispin took Rosby, Stokeworth, and Duskendale and launched an assault on Rook's Rest, and we know what happened there. But right now, Crispin and Sir Gawain have an army of 4,000 marching towards the Riverlands. The Greens also have House Baratheon and the Stormlands, and Boros Baratheon has an army of 6,000 men. But he could probably muster more because after Stannis kills Renly and he gets Renly's Stormlanders, he has 20,000 men. But again, Boros has another impregnable stronghold, Storm's End. I don't need to even go into detail about how strong Storm's End is. It was built by the Children of the Forest and Bran the Builder, okay? You would think that the Greens also have the Reach and House Tyrell, but they don't. The Reach is kind of split because Lord Beesbury of Honeyholt was murdered by the Greens. Of the Reach, the Greens have the Arbor and Old Town. Old Town is the home of Otto Hightower. His brother is the Lord. It's a given they would side with him. But Old Town has an impressive army. The text says they have much more than 9,000 men. So I'm going to round it out to about 12,000. Old Town also has the Hightower and the Grey Rats and the Faith, if that means anything to anyone. I feel like the Hightower is definitely a safe place to hide, but this is also a war with dragons, so I don't know, because Visenya was about to burn that shit down. The Arbor, the island known for making the good wine in Westeros, the Arbor Red, the Arbor Gold, they have an impressive fleet of ships. So let's get into the naval forces real quick for the Greens. Coming in hot, the Red Wine Fleet. So during the time of Game of Thrones, the Red Wine Fleet is the largest fleet in Westeros. During the time of Game of Thrones, it has 200 warships and about 1,000 merchant ships and wine cogs and trading galleys and whalers. The Red Wine Fleet ain't nothing to play with during Game of Thrones. The Red Wines also are no stranger to warfare. During Robert's Rebellion, it was their fleet that put the blockade on Storm's End and nearly starved Stannis to death. During the Greyjoy Rebellion, the Arbor's warships joined House Baratheon, commanded by Stannis Baratheon, and they smashed the Greyjoy fleet. So the Triarchy is also joining the fray to fight for the Greens. The Triarchy have about 400 to 500 ships combined. However, they are only coming to Westeros 90 ships deep. Also, they are madmen. They're unorganized and chaotic. Strength alone, that's great, but they are a huge liability for the Greens, in my opinion. The juice ain't worth the squeeze. However, if the Triarchy and the Red Wine Fleet can break the blockade on King's Landing and take control of those shipping lanes in the Black Water, they can starve out Dragonstone. So, in conclusion, the Greens have 3.5 dragons, 4 of the best strongholds in Westeros, 290 warships, and 32,000 fighting men, plus however many Triarchy fighters are on those 90 ships. Now let's talk about the other side, the Blacks, those that fight for Rhaenyra Targaryen. Let's start with the Air Force. Starting strong, we have the throat goat himself, Caraxes, the bloodworm, dragon of Daemon Targaryen, proven military commander and leader of men. Caraxes is no stranger to battle. He waged war in the Stepstones. Caraxes is an F-22 Raptor. Another dragon that waged war in the Stepstones was Seasmoke, another nuke. Seasmoke is being ridden by Adam of Hall. Seasmoke is no stranger to battle, but Adam is. Coming in hot, we have Vermithor, the Old King's dragon, the second biggest dragon in all of Westeros, ridden by Hugh the Hammer. Then we have Silverwing, ridden by Ulf the White. That's Queen Alysanne's dragon, and she's just as old as Vermithor. The Blacks also have Vermax, ridden by Jacaerys Valerion, and Moondancer, ridden by Baela Targaryen. They are younger dragons. They are faster than most dragons. They can outfly these bigger dragons. These dragons are your SR-71s. There's also Syrax, the Queen's dragon, but it's very unlikely the Queen herself will ride to battle on Syrax. Syrax is basically like Air Force One at this point, riding Rhaenyra around. But all jokes aside, her job will likely be to guard Dragonstone. There is also this dragon. Who knows what the hell is going on with this dragon? Rhaenyra's younger children also have dragons, Tyraxes and Stormcloud, but they are small and not likely to make any difference to anyone. I'm not going to lie to you guys. The Blacks have a very impressive air force. One area I noticed the Blacks are actually lacking in is strongholds. They have the best stronghold they have is Dragonstone. Dragonstone is an ancient Targaryen fortress. It's guarded by dragons, some of those dragons being wild dragons. But Dragonstone doesn't have a great force of men. So when it comes to time to muster and do all this stuff, they rely on their strongest ally across the bay, House Valerion. It is said that House Valerion made up half of the Black Army. Let me tell you something. Corlys Valerion is a win-win. He is one of the most respected men in Westeros. He's a known battle commander, a savvy politician, a warrior, a naval beast. He's also incredibly rich. But the Valerian fleet is the most famous fleet in all of Westeros. It is the greatest fleet that there ever was. And it made up some of the royal fleet for House Targaryen since the beginning of Aegon's conquest. It was the Valerian ships that brought Aegon to shore on the Blackwater. But the text never says how many ships exactly the Lord of the Tides had. But I'm sure it's more than House Redwine. Or else, Otto wouldn't have been trying to get in bed with the slimy squids of Pike in the form of the Red Kraken, nor would Aemon be so desperate as to call on the Triarchy. So I'm going to say that House Valerion has about 350 warships. We're going to have to figure out how many men House Valerion contributed to Rhaenyra's cause after we figure out the total men that are in her cause outside of them. In season 2, we saw Daemon struggle to get the Riverlands, but he did finally get it. And once he got it, he got 10,000 fighting men. The strongholds in the Riverlands, the Twins, River Run, maybe. Like, really, there's nothing that we should be including in here. We also saw that Jace was able to get the Winter Wolves, and Cragen Stark claimed for Rhaenyra. Cragen Stark sent the Winter Wolves, 3,000 Greybeards. Now, these Northerners, these are your special forces. These men don't plan to go back home. They are literally coming to die, and they are being led by Roddy the Ruin, the Lord of Barrowtown, and he was casted by Tommy Flanagan. If you watch Sons of Anarchy, you already know who Chibbs is, but if you don't, this is what we have in store.
Dirty, loyalist bastard.
Also, Cragen has Winterfell, so Winterfell is formidable. It's a formidable castle. However, it's highly unlikely there will be any fighting that far north. I feel like they should almost, 3,000 Greybeards should count for 6,000 men, because these are men that are going off like Vikings, like Ragnar and Rollo, thinking I'm going to just kill some shit and go off until Valhalla. Rhaenyra also has the Eyrie. The Vale of Arryn sent 15,000 men to Rhaenyra's cause. And in the Vale, the Knights of the Vale, nothing to be played with. The Eyrie is also considered as an impregnable castle. Should any of the Blacks need to flee, need to hold it down, they have the Eyrie. However, dragons do fly. That's why Jane Eyre is freaking out right now and wanting a dragon, because it's hard to get into the Eyrie as a person. You have to take a mule up a mountain, you have to get into a chain car and go across. Catelyn has a whole chapter of how difficult it is to get into the Eyrie, but it's not hard for a dragon to get there. And also fighting for Rhaenyra in the Reach is House Tarly. House Tarly has claimed for Rhaenyra. There is no exact number, but it was likely a force just as formidable as Storm's End. They do say that it was a formidable force, but they don't give an exact number. So I'm going to say it's less than Storm's End, and I'm going to say it's 4,000 men. It's House Tarly. They can muster a good army, a good size army. So with that being said, the Blacks have 6 dragons, 350 warships. Of the Riverlands, the North, the Vale, House Tarly, the small forces on Dragonstone, like House Celtigar and them, they are at about 32,000 fighting men. But that doesn't count that the books also say House Valerion made up for more than half of Rhaenyra's forces. That would mean that number would more than double to 64,000 fighting men. While the Blacks definitely don't have the stronger castles, the Greens are totally winning that category. They outmatch their opponent in every other category. The blacks, Navy, Air Force, and men outmatch them. Terrible. The numbers are terrible. If the greens were smart, they would sue for peace right now. But what do you think? As always, thanks for watching. Okay, my sweet summer children, have a good day.